Hey guys, welcome back. It's John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, and this is my recap slash review of The Last of Us, Season 1, Episode 2. Obviously, spoilers. Why else would you click on these videos if you weren't expecting there to be spoilers? So, I'm a blind film critic, and I watch things with audio description, and this has audio description if you watch it on HBo MAX. I'm assuming if you watch it live on HBO, it doesn't have audio description. I'm pretty sure HBO doesn't have live audio description, but HBO Max, if you wait, you can watch it on there with audio description. So, so I loved the first episode. I thought it was really solid. It felt very cinematic. I think they're throwing money at this, which is a good sign for the future. Sometimes you're not really sure how much money they're going to put into a project. Are they willing to fully back it? But obviously, I think they're trying to create a new series here that's, very House of the Dragon, so that way they can have something else rotating in that is guaranteed to have ratings, since Westworld is dead for them. Of course, it is Warner Brothers Discovery, so don't be surprised if they decide halfway through the season to cancel it and to scrap the remaining episodes for a tax write-off. I will never not make that joke about a Warner Brothers Discovery property. So in the second episode, our crew is they're still trying to work their way through, and obviously Boston's creepy. It's what I love about the show is it's set at a time and place and with different properties than The Walking Dead, because it's so easy to make that connection and to be like, oh, this is The Walking Dead. And it's like, wait a minute, no, it's not. Like, I remember when Rick Grimes walked into Atlanta and there were just hordes of zombies. Like, he could not avoid them. Like, there were so many of them everywhere. And here, there are still some zombies, but not for what you would expect for Boston. Like, for the population of Boston. So definitely not like a body to whatever ratio. It's kind of low. Either a lot of people survived or a lot of people are dead somewhere in a mass grave. I don't know, but no, they kind of make it through, and they're walking through buildings and things have collapsed, and actually this is not really intense until they decide to have a night at the museum. Just a night, just going to the museum. And this is where it gets kind of silly, because they look at it, and I guess maybe it's because they're just like, there's no other way. We have to go through. Like, the only way is through. They either have to go through or go back, and going back is not an option, so they just go through. That's what I was picking up on. But sometimes in a video game, there's that moment where you can't go back. It felt like that to me. I felt like I'm in a video game, because you're going in, you're seeing sort of the opening scene, right? And you're like, oh, who killed that guy? Oh, what did that to him? I don't know. But we have to move forward. And like the character just starts going, like you're in like cinematic mode, and the character just starts pulling you forward. And you can't stop. And you're just like, no, why would you do that? Why would you keep moving forward? It's the horror movie trope of I would never go down there. I would no. So we're introduced to clickers, which was definitely creepy, and it kind of also made that like the Grudge Girl sound. I was properly scared by the clickers. So it worked. It was effective. And then I got great audio description that let me know that the clickers were fully covered in their uh, whatever fungus or whatever that crap is that's covering their body. So like their head, I just imagined this like marshmallow looking thing walking around, like even like like a marshmallow is walking around and attacking people, and he's turned into a zombie. Anyway, I have weird thoughts. So yeah, so of course, we get out of that because really short show if we didn't like Last of Us. Wow, this is a good 2 episodes. you know. But we see that they test her being bit, right? So basically, well, they didn't really intentionally test it, but she gets bit again, and she's her wound isn't getting any worse, and she's not turning. So she is in fact possibly immune. So Pedro Pascal and our expendable character, which I'm sure when we're in season 7 we'll be like, who is that woman? What was her name? Because now she's gone, so she can't Morgan her way back into life. It's not like she ran off in another direction and then she'll come back in. It's not like the two of them split up and she's like, I'm gonna go over here, and they gave her a radio and like she might come. Nah, she blew herself up, gone. So yeah, so they went into the Capitol because they saw a trail of blood, because that's a thing we follow. A trail of blood. Oh. And then they go into the Capitol, and lo and behold, dead bodies. And somehow one of them was alive, and when he kills it, it triggers. They're on some sort of like they can sync up with each other, and the other ones know that are in the area. And it like lets them know where you are. So they run in, and they start running, and that's when we find out that the one who is not a main character got bit. And she's like, oh shit. Well, you two run. Protect her. Promise me. Promise me. I've asked nothing of you. Promise me that you'll get her there. So, it was a very dramatic moment. But this is my problem with the show. So I'm kind of making fun of it, is because this is literally what I said in the first episode. My problem with the show is that the structure of the video game is such that it's 2 main characters and no one else. Like, you don't gain other people. There's not like a mass of people. It's not based on a comic book like The Walking Dead, where they had like a rotating in and out cast of characters, so you had more to play with, and there was actually sort of that anticipation of, oh, this person's going to be here for a while. Oh, this person, oh, I read their comic book line. Oh, they're not going to make it for very long. Like that kind of thing. There was never sort of they didn't play with any of that. So until they introduce a character that can survive for a longer duration than 2 episodes, the series is bullshit. I love it, but it's bullshit. It's a bullshit series because you'll never... After a while, everybody's going to get tired of it, because it'll just be 2 people and they get introduced to somebody and we'll be like, well, that person's going to die. Oh, look, they died. Any other cast member that ever joins the show, you'll just be like, well, they're not one of the 2 main characters. So until you convince me that somebody can actually survive, and I don't just mean for 2 or 3 episodes, I mean they need to bring a character in this show who doesn't die until season 4. Like, they need to have somebody in this show who's not one of those 2 characters, who survives, like, an entire season. Like, I want, in the next episode, them to run into somebody who, like, makes it for the remainder of the season, who's in season 2 and just keeps going, and we're like, oh, man, this is actually going to happen. They've actually got a 3rd character that's actually going to survive. Because otherwise there's no trust with the audience. you'll never be able to convince anybody that a character is going to survive, because those that have played the video game are just going to be like, well, they're not some of these two, so. And also, then there's no ever actual threat of danger to those two characters. It's sort of like I'm watching the final season of The Walking Dead and thinking to myself, so these characters that have spin-offs, clearly nothing's going to happen to them because they have spin-offs. So, so there's no actual threat or danger there. Whereas in the early Walking Dead, I mean, you had so many characters that maybe you were like, yeah, well, obviously Rick Grimes, but then at the same time, you know, we knew about Game of Thrones and what they managed to do to the seemingly lead protagonist. So even if you were somebody who didn't read the comic books, you could have at least been convinced of the possibility that Rick Grimes could have been offed early on, if Game of Thrones was willing to do it. So it's just the illusion of danger, and when there's no illusion of danger, and there's no illusion of safety, the stakes are not there. There's no stakes. So people will come, they'll enter in, and they'll run into somebody, and they'll be like, okay, well, how many episodes did they get this person for? Oh, 3, turns out. Cool. And then that person dies, you know? It's just, it's a problem they have to overcome, because the series will end up being its Achilles heel. It works in a video game because you can only control a certain amount of characters. So, it's the reason why there's never been a Walking Dead video game that functions the way The Walking Dead does. Because what would you do? Like, you'd have to build a massive game where you could constantly switch out from characters, and you'd have to try to make them survive. You'd have to start out with Rick Grimes, who slowly makes his way to the community, and there's a whole bunch of characters there. And then from there on, maybe some characters you can't ever save, but you basically would have your choice. You could switch out. You could play as Glenn. You could play as one of the other characters. Other players could join in, and they can pick from the characters that you have with you. They can make like a Mass Effect style game where every mission you roll with, you get to pick from who's available, and you could roll with 3 other people in your squad, stuff like that. I mean, that's what you end up with, is that style, but they've never been willing to make that game because Walking Dead has always a large group of people alive with people to choose from. So, and different skill sets. Like, you start off as Rick Grimes, but real quickly, a whole bunch of people are going to be like, when do I get to play as Daryl? You know? Immediately. When do I get to play? Can we save Merle? Can I play as Merle? You know, stuff like that. Which could create for a very interesting game. But unfortunately, The Last of Us is coming from a video game stance as a 2-player game. So, yeah, it's not. He wasn't trying to keep a large group of people alive. He was just trying to save the girl. This is a little bit more like Heroes Save the Cheerleader, Save the World, but on a smaller scale. Anyway, that's my thought, and I think I'm right. It's cool if you have your own thoughts, but I think after a while, I just know it's going to become monotonous for people. It's just going to become monotonous when every character who gets introduced dies, and when they try to convince you that either one of these two people are ever in any kind of danger, and you know they're not. So they're always going to make it out, you know. So it's just the stakes are not there, and they have to do something radical and different to change those stakes, and that means pulling away from the video game and not following the same structure. So, which could piss video game people off, but that's dumb. They're dumb for thinking that their way works in a TV show or a movie. It doesn't, because as I've explained, the stakes are never real. Anybody you meet, you assume will die, and then the two main characters you assume will live. So what are you watching? You know, The Walking Dead. We walk through every episode, and we're like, I don't know, somebody could die this episode, you know, but we don't know. That was the beauty of The Walking Dead. And once The Walking Dead started changing up characters' deaths, they introduced somebody like Daryl Dixon, who's not even in the comic books. So they changed it up to make it so that we could actually be surprised. They killed off characters too early. They let characters survive longer than they did in the comics. And suddenly, the whole world was different. And then every once in a while, you would get somebody who got their comic book death. So it did match the video game. It did match the comic book series. That they can do a version of that here, but it does require there to be more than two people in this cast, more than two people in this team traipsing across the world for longer periods of time. He has to be able to accumulate people. So anyway, but for now, I'm gonna go ahead and give The Last of Us an A. My worst fears were realized in that episode with her blowing herself up. So I was like, yep, this is exactly what I was worried about. Their inability to maintain a third or fourth character in the show. So let me know what you think in the comments. And if this is your first time in my channel, please subscribe. So I can keep doing this. Yeah, it's free. You just get to click subscribe. That's all you have to do. And you can go to my website, macthemovieguy.com. You can go to Twitter or Instagram and follow me there at macthemovieguy. You can go to the audio description project, adp.acb.org. It'll let you know what has audio description and where you can watch it. And you can go to the ADNA.org. That's the ADNA.org. And it'll let you know, who your favorite narrator. Look up your favorite narrator, and it'll let you know what else they've done. So that's all for me right now. I will review something else, and I'll see you back next week with another episode of The Last of Us. But until then, I will see you on the other side.